Even as I, Brock Gordon, headed to my next contract assignment, I asked myself why I agreed to accept this assignment. I think the main reasons were that I wanted to forget my ex-wife, and the money was good. Moreover, I was told over and over again that this was a patriotic act and would benefit national security, indeed, the international security of all Western countries, more than any other thing I could do. So I had the perfect prerequisites for this job. I work for a corporation that has contracts with Western governments for covert activities. My particular area of expertise is protecting and analyzing the electronic data of terrorists and other potential enemies to prevent attacks. Although I am only 31 years old, I received a bachelor's degree in computer science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the United States and a master's degree in infrastructure defense and international security from the University of Carleton in Canada, and a PhD in strategy and security from the University of Exeter in the UK. The work was to last approximately a year, the estimated time it would take to do what was needed, in a remote location in British Columbia, Canada. Most of those employed were American, Canadian, British, and German military personnel, although there were a few other private contractors. There were about 30 employees in total, 20 of whom had higher education and real experience in security matters, especially in the fight against terrorism. The technological equipment was equipped with the latest technology. Since the entire program was secret, workers who had wives, there were no married women workers, and even children took them with them. Nobody ever wore a uniform. The facility, as far as the neighbors, about 100 local residents knew, was intended for Bitcoin mining, although if any of them had actually looked into the situation, no one did in my time, they would have seen that the facility does not consume much electricity, like Bitcoin mining, and it didn't make as much noise. Although literature about the facility suggested that the reason for the facility's relative silence was due to advanced soundproofing technology that had never been used before. All workers worked in turns, so that there were always at least 7 people working on site. Most of the workers were very friendly, and we often had 10 or 12 families at a time. There was no attempt to ostracize single people, male or female, like me. After about a month, I got into the work and felt it was worth it, and we were making progress and had already prevented one terrorist attack in the UK. However, I noticed that most of the 14 wives present seemed to be bored. Although they had a social club and gym for sports, and those with children and some without children helped out at the local understaffed elementary school, they had no opportunity to work or gain significant satisfaction despite the evening cinema and parties. There was one thing I didn't like about this situation. In fact, that's putting it mildly. There was one thing about this situation that was driving me crazy. There was not a single woman who attracted me. The single women who worked with us were very competent and intelligent people, but I was not interested in them because they were plain or downright ugly. I was very friendly with them, but did not experience any sexual attraction to them. Among approximately 1,100 townspeople, there was also not a single unmarried woman who scored more than 5 points on a 10-point scale. It seems like all the decent and attractive single women have moved to Vancouver or another major city, although some have actually married local guys. Due to the remoteness of the location and the length of the workday, there was no way to get the opportunity to travel unless one had 4 days off in a row, which rarely, if ever, happened. Given my situation with my ex-wife and the need for camaraderie among my colleagues, I had no intention of chasing their wives. None of the wives dressed provocatively, because this was not the place, although during the first month I did see half of them at the gym when I worked out, and the ones I saw had good figures. In fact, I felt embarrassed that I was keeping track. Of the 14 wives, I would say that all of them had faces that were a 7 or higher on a scale of 10, and bodies that were as good as they could be determined since bikini competitions was not carried out, at least by 8 points. About 6 weeks into my work in a remote part of British Columbia, I had a very good day. I was almost single-handedly responsible for investigating a terrorist attack in Toronto that was quickly stopped by Canadian authorities. But when I got to my small detached house around 10 p.m., for some reason, the lack of sex hit me hard. I went online and checked one of my email accounts. Besides the usual unsolicited requests and a few short notes from friends and family, there was one with an unusual name. I would have thought that this might be typical spam if the title, Mysterious Local Sluts, had not intrigued me. I clicked on it. Of course, I would never click on the attachment, a surefire way to infect your computer with a virus. And obviously, the email writer knew this because all the information was in the body of the email. There were 6 photographs. All featured frontal shots of naked women with face masks and matching blonde wigs. The words were straightforward. Local mystery sluts available for the right man. Must be single and know how to please a woman. Sexual satisfaction must be mutual. The following opportunities are available next week for slutty girls in photos AF. Price to be agreed upon prior to service. Our girls do not show their faces and don't reveal their identity. Don't flirt and don't talk much, but they love sex. Fill out the questionnaire. No names. This was followed by photographs with dates and times. The only thing required in the form was applicant's address, price range, letter to the slut, date and time of contact, desired amount of time. I pondered for at least half an hour, scrutinizing the photos and wondering if this was a fake, a joke, a potential disaster, or a way to shave off my horns. As far as I could tell from the relatively small photographs, to my taste, the women in photographs A, D, and F had body types of 9 to 10, and the women in photographs B, C, and E had body figures of 8 to 9. In other words, they all suited my needs to the highest degree. The slut in photo D had a date and time that suited me best. I specified 100 hours as the price range and 2 hours as the amount of time. If the woman in photo D had been anywhere near as pretty and interested as she seemed, I probably would have paid $1,000 an hour. I was paid well and had nothing to spend my money on, so money didn't count. With my last breath, I closed my eyes and pressed the send icon. The next morning when I got up and checked my computer, I was surprised to see the answer. The slut in photo D is available for 2 hours on April 14th from 10 p.m. to midnight, $100 hour, cash only, condoms required. Click on the icon to accept. I read it twice, clicked on the icon, and couldn't wait until Wednesday night to see if it was real. It was hard to finish work on Wednesday thinking about that night. I had so many questions in my head. Where did this slutty girl come from? Did she really look like she did in the photo? Was this going to be some kind of sick joke? Etc. I finally concentrated enough to finish my work and returned home by 8 p.m. to shower, clean up the house, including changing the sheets on my bed, and take a short nap. I couldn't believe it when there was a knock on my back door at 9:58. I looked outside, without turning on the outside overhead light, and saw what undoubtedly appeared to be a woman about 5 feet 6 inches tall, wearing a cape with what looked like long-sleeved sweatpants underneath. I opened the door, and the woman quickly entered my house and then pulled down the curtains covering the windows in the door. She took off all her clothes, revealing a body that actually looked like photo D. Her mask wasn't cute, but it wasn't creepy either, and her blonde wig seemed to be glued on tightly. In a hoarse, obviously mechanically altered voice, she said, "Please put $200 in my fanny pack and then take me to your bedroom." I did as I was told and quickly undressed as soon as I entered the bedroom. She looked at me from the waist down for a good 15 or 20 seconds, then asked, "Do you have Magnum condoms?" "Of course," I answered, holding out a box of 12 pieces. Kissing on the lips was impossible because of her mask, but she wasted no time in wrapping her arms around my flagpole. It didn't take long before we went from standing to lying on my clean sheets. D was so damn active. We both lay there, panting, exhausted, and despite the relative speed of our coupling, our bodies were glistening with sweat. It was amazing, simply amazing, I smiled. "Is it worth $100 an hour?" she asked in her mechanical voice. "It costs $10,000, but $100 is all I can afford." I smiled again. Her eyes danced even more. Then she said, "If you promise not to try to look me in the face, I will take off my mask to prepare for the second round." The best offer I have received in recent years. She removed the condom from me, making sure she was stimulating my penis, tied it off, and expertly threw it into the wastebasket in my room. "You Caitlin Clark?" I asked, comparing her masterful shot to the highest-scoring women's college basketball player in the United States. She giggled at this, laid me on my back, and said, "Look straight up, not at me." I couldn't see, but I felt her lift her mask slightly. It didn't take long before I moaned and was all geared up, the fastest recovery I could remember, no doubt due to the fact that I hadn't had sex in a long time. I rolled her off me. I thought something was wrong, and it was confirmed when I heard Dee say, "Oh, shit." I understood what she was talking about. I didn't have a condom on. "Sorry," I said. "I didn't realize this until now. I have to say that even though I had no intention of having sex without a condom, it was amazing." Even though she found it a little awkward to talk in her altered voice, we had a very pleasant conversation in bed. Eventually, she started massaging me from the waist down again, and, to our mutual surprise, my friend came to life again. "Is this thing really ready for the next round?" She giggled. At least, as far as I could tell, it was a giggle. "He really likes you." I smiled, reaching for another condom. "Forget about the Magnum," she said, playing with my foreskin. "The damage has already been done, so we can have as much fun as possible." It was 12:30 when we came out of our shared shower, and she got dressed. "I'm sorry it took more than 2 hours," I told her. "But I don't," she laughed. At least, I think it was laughter. "It was the most fun I've had in years," she said. "In fact, if you decide to use my services again, just get an STD report and salary's $50 an hour, and we can meet as often as we want without condoms." I looked into her eyes intently. "I would like to kiss your lips," I growled. "Maybe someday," she answered, stroking my cheek. For the first time since I arrived in British Columbia, I went to sleep a completely satisfied and happy person. Visions of our extraordinary sexual relationship played pleasantly in my mind. After my experience with Dee, in order, since that was when my schedules coincided with the opportunities they noted in revised, the email I received every week used C, A, F, B, and E. They were all very different from each other, but each was fun and sexy in its own way. What they all had in common was sexual tension. Given what Dee told me when she left my house, I quoted $50 an hour and 2-hour sessions as my price and time, without any backlash. Everyone seemed to be happy with this arrangement. In short, all 6 of them were great. After 2 weeks of dating others, I finally found a time that worked for Dee and I. I booked it immediately and went to get tested for STDs after my last hookup with the last of the 5 other whores. My second encounter with Dee was even better than the first, something I had thought unlikely, if not impossible. Not only was the sex amazing, the best of my life, but I really felt connected to her, and I think she felt connected to me. Over the next 4 months, my life changed from the longest period of sexual lull of my adult life to the most varied and intense sex I had ever had. I had at least 3 meetings a week with one woman or another, and as many with Dee as possible given our schedule. I'm not sure of the exact date or why, but I suddenly felt like I had to know who these whores were. I think it was after Dee left one night that I realized I might be in love with her, even though I had never seen her face or heard her real voice. Once I came to the conclusion that I needed to find out who they were, I felt like a bloodhound. At every party or event I went to, I would scrutinize all the women there. I would give a gift, usually jewelry, to each slutty woman as they left my house. The ones Dee had were expensive, hoping that they might slip up and wear them to an event. And I've even used my computer skills to hack into the HR information of all the employees' wives. I did identify C as the pretty Debbie Ritchie, the wife of one of my colleagues. I saw her at the gym, where you could tell her body type pretty clearly. Her reaction to me when we talked also gave away. She was too friendly and smiling when we talked, although I didn't seem to know her very well, outside of my bedroom. She also didn't see me sneak a glance at her as she walked out of the gym wearing street clothes and wearing one of the bracelets I gave her on her left wrist. Although I never told Debbie that I knew who she was, my discovery led me to believe that all 6 mystery whores were the wives of my colleagues, or perhaps the wives of the townspeople. What drove me crazy was that I couldn't really identify the other 5 except Debbie, especially since A had huge breasts, and especially D, since by then I knew every inch of her body better than any other woman in my life. After 2 months of fruitless searching, I decided to just enjoy life and forget about it. I only had about a month left on my contract and had already been given another assignment when I heard through the grapevine that 2 of my colleagues were having marital difficulties. As stated earlier, life was not easy for the wives as they had little to do. I came to the conclusion that Mysterious Ludes was created specifically for titillation. Soon after I became aware of the 2 cases of marital disharmony, I had another session with D. D had always been known for her unrivaled sexual zeal, but this time she outdid herself. When we were well advanced again after the 2-hour session for which we had been contracted, she sat me down on the sofa in my living room. "Brock," she began, calling me by name the only time I could remember. "I know you're leaving in about a month." "What are your plans after this?" "Well, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation in Hawaii and then start my next project in Washington, D.C. "Why do you ask?" D paused for a long time, sighed, then said, "I have a connection with you, and I think you have a connection with me. I want to go on vacation with you, and if we work out, I want to go to Washington with you. I saved all the money you paid me so I could pay for my flight to Hawaii, and like I said, we'll see what happens then." "Are you married?" "Yes, but my marriage is falling apart, not because of you, but my relationship with you has made me realize that my life doesn't have to be devoid of any spark or passion like it is now. I don't think I can last another 6 months with my husband, and of course if I go to Hawaii with you, it'll all be over." I was hesitant, but only because I let my feelings for D overwhelm me. I was actually head over heels in love with her. She mistook my contemplation for a bad feeling and felt obliged to continue. "I understand that you need to know who I am before you can seriously consider my offer, so here we go," D said, pulling off her wig. I didn't protest for the 2 minutes or so it took her to completely remove the wig and mask. As soon as she did this, I recognized her. It was Carolyn Litton, the wife of one of my colleagues. She has a pretty face and beautiful dark hair that flows down her neck almost to her shoulders. When I saw the face, I wondered why I had not guessed who she was before, but I smiled when I recognized her. Although I didn't know her very well outside of my bedroom, what I knew about her I really liked. "Carolyn," I smiled, "you are beautiful. If you're really going to leave your husband anyway, I really want you to come to Hawaii with me, but at my expense. Save your money." She stood up, sat on my lap, and we kissed on the lips for the first time. The first kiss was short and sweet. The second was long and passionate. The third was loving. We talked about the future. We decided it would be best if we didn't tell anyone else what was going on. "Except our best friend," she countered. We decided to send her most important belongings, with the exception of the clothes and jewelry that she planned to take with her to Hawaii, to my company's Washington, D.C. office for storage. This was nothing new for our organization, nothing special. I just told them that these are my things. We agreed on another session a week before leaving, and I told her that I would stop using the services of other mysterious sluts. She surprised me with her next comment. "Although, once we go to Hawaii, I would like to be alone with you. But for now, could you do me a favor?" "Of course," I smiled. "One of the other women is also leaving her husband, and she really, really likes you. While others just like you and do it just for the excitement and extra sex, but for one of them it is more meaningful, and she is truly a good friend of mine. Could you keep having sex with her until we leave? Who is this? She is C in our selection of photographs. You mean Debbie Ritchie? How do you know? Asked Carolyn. She's the only one of you I figured out. Yes, since you really want it, I will continue to entertain her. However, it should be free and without condoms. We can both get tested for STDs. Will this work? I'm sure it will happen. I'll talk to her, and now that you know who I am, I'll call you from a public phone. We kissed again, then Carolyn left. That night I had the best sleep I have had since I can remember. Carolyn called me on my cell phone the next day. Debbie enthusiastically supports this proposal. Can she come to your house on Thursday evening around 8 o'clock with her STD test? That would be great, I replied. But are you sure you're okay with this? I am ready to start an exclusive relationship with you right now. Debbie is my best friend, and I'll probably tell you about it on the way to Vancouver early next month, she chuckled. So I'm a lot more than just okay with it. By Thursday morning, I had another good STD test. However, Thursday was a rough day, and I was completely exhausted by the time I got home just before 8 p.m. I wanted to cancel my appointment with Debbie. I was so exhausted, but I really didn't know how to contact her. When she showed up promptly at 8 with a bright smile, a look of pure anticipation on her face, and a full STD test result, I didn't have the heart to put it off. I let Debbie in, and she immediately pulled my head towards her and kissed me passionately. Our first lip-on-lip kiss. After chatting for a while, I told her that I had had a long, tiring day. She promised to make everything better. The next time I opened my eyes, it seemed as if the sun was trying to peek and shine through the east-facing bedroom window. Debbie, I said, it's already morning. Will this be a problem for you? Debbie moved away from me and took the watch from the bedside table next to her. Hell, it's 6:42 and Rick gets home from his night shift this week around 6:20. But I feel so good that it's worth it, she continued, trying to force a smile. She jumped out of bed, took her cell phone out of her purse, and checked her messages. Suddenly her expression changed from worried to happy. Thank God, she grinned. He texted me at 6:00 that there was an emergency and he would most likely not be home until 9:00. I will tell him that I just got up. After she texted Rick, she put her cell phone back in her purse and I jumped off the bed and grabbed her. That means we have time for another fantastic sex, I grinned, hugging him. As she left, we had another passionate kiss. I had breakfast and got ready for work. The fatigue of the previous evening was replaced by a sexy little minx carrying my ashes, and I was blessed with a good night's sleep. The rest of the month went by pretty quickly. Carolyn and I no longer had sex. We now made love once a week, and I talked to her on the phone every day. Our conversations were relaxed and meaningful. I became more and more confident that she and I had a real future together. Last month, I also had sex with Debbie 2 nights a week. It was purely recreational sex, and very good sex at that. She was the only person who knew that Carolyn and I were going to Hawaii together and trying to form a long-term relationship. However, she did not hesitate to tell me that she was soon going to divorce Rick, and that, if Carolyn had not already claimed me, she would make every effort to get me to take her with me. I told her that she was amazing and sexy and that she would have no problem finding someone who would truly appreciate her. Carolyn and I planned to leave on Saturday morning. She pretended to leave with Debbie, who was supposed to take her to the nearest bus station on Thursday, but after they drove around a bit, Debbie dropped her off about 100 meters from my back door, hidden in the woods, so that no one saw Carolyn enter. That Thursday night, Carolyn and I spent the first night together, and it was magical. The sex was amazing and leisurely, but what was more important were the strong feelings we had for each other. On Friday, I attended my going-away party between 2 shifts at the site. Everyone was friendly, even Carolyn and Debbie's husbands, who of course had no idea what was going on. I made one last attempt to find out who the mystery whores A, B, E, and F were, but to no avail. I left the party as soon as it was appropriate for me, saying that I needed to get up early to head to Vancouver and have another wonderful night of love with Carolyn. Carolyn and I set off on the roughly 400-mile drive to Vancouver a little after 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. We talked about a lot of things, but I was determined to learn as much as I could about the mysterious lewds. So after a quick stop for brunch, I said, "Okay, Carolyn, you promised to tell me about mysterious sluts, so start posting it. What do you want to know? Whatever you are ready to tell me, but let's start with how many clients you have." "Only one, she grinned. "What?" I thought she was joking. "Let me tell you how it started, then maybe you'll believe me." "This must be delicious," I laughed. As you know, my wife's life in this institution was unbearably boring. We had nowhere to work, no worries, little time off with our husbands, nowhere to go. Debbie and I quickly became best friends, and we got along great with most of the wives and often played cards, just to chat and pass the time. We all started working out regularly, as the gym was just about the newest in town and better than you'd expect for a town of 1,100 people. And we all started getting into the best shape of our lives. "There's only one problem with intense exercise, though," she chuckled. "What is this?" I kept a straight face. "This leads to a sharp increase in libido, and our out-of-shape, hard-working husbands could not cope with this work. There wasn't much of a choice, however, since the townspeople weren't particularly desirable, and as you could easily see, none of the single men among the workers were even remotely sexy. And then you showed up," she grinned. "What do you mean appeared?" "Tall, handsome, fully fit, and charming single guy. Debbie and I admitted that we tried to keep our distance and admire you from afar. After a while, as our already bad marriage began to crack, Debbie and I decided we wanted to give you a try. So we came up with the idea of mysterious prostitutes who hope to seduce you. We decided that we wouldn't look legit if it was just the two of us, so we felt out the others very, very carefully. A, B, E, and F were the only ones to whom we revealed our plan, because through our research and discussions, we had concluded that the other wives would not be interested in us, or we did not trust them. Surprisingly, A, B, E, and F all agreed, as long as either Debbie or I contacted you first and told you if it was worth it. "Are you going to tell me who A, B, E, and F are?" I asked, wiggling my eyebrows. "Hell no," she laughed. "They would have killed me." "Well, let me ask one question about them, though. Although I'm not really surprised that I never found out who B, E, and F were, I am annoyed that I was never able to find out who was given those bulging chest balls like A," I started, shaking his head again. "Pervert," she laughed. "Okay, I'll tell you about it. Slut A is a married city dweller. Debbie got to know her really well through her volunteer work at the elementary school, and they often commiserate about their unfulfilled libido." "Are you saying that she is a teacher?" "Yes. The elementary school is small, so there are only 4 teachers, each of whom teaches 2 grades from 1 to 8. And after that, the children have to take a bus 3 days a week to the high school, located 30 miles away, and 2 days to study online. She is a 3rd and 4th grade teacher. You're right that with F-cup tits on her skinny body, if you ever met her, you'd easily know who she is, which is why we made every effort to ensure you never met. This solves one riddle," I smiled. "But it's still hard to believe that you arranged this whole story with mysterious libertines, especially for me." "We did it because you were the only man in the area that any of the 6 of us married would be willing to risk sleeping with. Moreover, we knew from our sources, which I will also not disclose, that you were unhappy with the lack of desired female company. Plus, we knew your schedule, so we set it up so that if you responded to our email, you would choose either me or Debbie. Our plan was for Debbie or I to test, and tell the others who weren't yet sure. They'll go, whether they were willing to do so. They were at least willing to be photographed naked in a mask and wigs. Well, I guess I was lucky that my first session was so exciting, didn't I?" I laughed. "I think so," she laughed in response. "Of course, I gave legitimately rave reviews, so they all wanted to try it, and at the risk of inflating your ego too much, they were all very pleased with their encounters. In fact, they were very angry at me for making you see only Debbie and me last month. They all wanted to meet you to say goodbye. So that's all you have to say? I asked skeptically. Sorry, but yes, although there is one more tidbit I can add. Debbie and I fell in love with you. Others really liked you, but they had no intention of leaving their husbands. They just wanted some extra, and great, sex. Would Debbie really try to get me to run away with her instead of you? Damn it. Yes. The deal I made with her to get her to back off was to encourage you to have sex with her twice a week for the last month. You know that I fell in love with you, not her, and I would never run away with her instead of you. I smiled. I hoped, but I didn't want to risk it, and I knew that if Debbie gave me her word, she would back down. She retreated, didn't she? Yes, she did so. In words. I really got the impression that if I changed my mind myself, she would really be happy about it. But like I said, I love you. And although I like her, and she was fun in bed, I don't like her. I love and will never love. We got to Vancouver that night, spent another night of love at the hotel, and flew to Hawaii the next day. We boarded the plane without any encumbrances. Hawaii was everything we hoped for. Even though we already knew we were 100% sexually compatible, we discovered that we actually enjoyed being together outside of bed almost as much as we did in it. I knew we had a future together when one night, instead of going out to dinner and dancing, we cooked dinner together in the apartment we were renting and just cuddled and watched a mindless comedy on TV. It was almost as fun as sex, and probably even more loving. Carolyn moved to D.C. with me. She took a job in her old field in public relations, and we got married a couple of months after her divorce was final. I never worried about Carolyn about cheating on her first husband because I don't subscribe to the once a cheater, always a cheater philosophy. But she did worry about it and constantly tried to reassure me during our first 6 months in the area. Colombia, until I finally told her to stop, that I trusted her completely. Now 12 years, 3 children, 2 dogs, and a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs have passed. We are more in love with each other than we were in Hawaii. Surprisingly, when I look back on my impressive sexual satisfaction in British Columbia with the mystery sluts, despite how wonderful that time was for me, I wouldn't trade a second of my current happy life for going back. Debbie, who never remarried but was now even sexier, visited us many times over the years. But Carolyn made it very clear to her, "You can look, but you can't touch," when it came to me. Carolyn didn't have to do this because I will always be loyal to her, but the fact that she cared enough to warn her friend gives me inner peace. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.